Einstein tried to steal the Habsburg royal family during World War I. The excuse motive being my Habsburg ancestors were related to the old French royal family, and Einstein was related to the perpetrators of the mass murder of French royals in the 1790s, whose descendants had never been allowed to use the French royal estate. Perpetrators from French Guiana. Einstein was related to did not really steal the French royal family in the 1790s, but people pretended they did temporarily with murder, molestation, and dress-ups, plus some squatting for a short period. When the perpetrators' relatives, descendants, and cohorts didn't get to use the vacant royal family buildings and artifacts in France as if they stole the royal estate on an ongoing basis, people started regularly rioting there in protest, claiming they should be allowed to pretend to have stolen the royal estate. Particularly after photographs became commonplace. They still riot in the streets there in France regularly, like a traditional job since 1800. Pretending descendants of those heinous perpetrators from the 1790s should be allowed to pretend to own the remnants of the royal estate on an ongoing basis. And if not, they will keep trying to steal royal titles of other royal families to compensate for not being allowed to pretend to own the French one. As if they stole the French royal estate with the murders, Emperor Napoleon stole it back, and they want it given back to them to use indefinitely. People insist on pretending there was no law, registration documents, identification techniques, etc., and that anyone could become the royal family by stealing the crown and then using the furniture used in the coronation and squatting in a building. A pathetic mental illness. So, Einstein the lunatic targeted my Habsburg ancestors. I am a Duke of Austria and a Lord of Hungary, have been since my father Duke and Lord Kevin died in 2004. The Einsteins were involved in the assassination of my great-great-grandfather Emperor Franz-Joseph I's nephew Archduke Franz-Ferdinand and his wife in Serbia in 1914, particularly one of Einstein's half-brothers in a terrorism group called the Black Hand. The assassination of Franz-Ferdinand and his wife caused the first official declaration of World War I in 1914. During World War I they abducted and murdered future Habsburg Emperor Charles, the grandnephew of my great-great-grandfather Emperor Franz-Joseph I. Then Emperor Franz-Joseph as well. They then tried to pretend one of Einstein's younger half-brothers, related to the murderers of the French royals in the 1790s, was Charles I and would become the new, fake, emperor. As if it was to compensate descendants of the French Guiana lunatic perpetrators from the 1790s by stealing a different royal family that was related to the real French one. My Habsburg royal family. They always documented the abductions, torture, and murder of their victims with photographs. The imposter Charles I was eventually found out, and it led to the Habsburg royal family dynasty being dissolved as the constitutional monarchy of Austria and Hungary in around 1922. It was a long, boring process that was over years beforehand. They couldn't backtrack to Franz-Joseph I and then forwards through his only legitimate child Prince Sebastian, my great-grandfather, as Franz-Joseph I was murdered and died after Charles I, his replacement future successor, was already murdered. Only minor royal titles like Duke, Duchess, Austria, and Lord, Lady, Hungary were left afterwards. Because of circumstance my great-grandfather Prince Sebastian inherited the entire Habsburg estate previously owned by his father Emperor Franz-Joseph I. Prince Sebastian had declined becoming the next emperor at 21, was replaced by Franz-Joseph I's grandnephew Charles I as successor-to-be. My great-grandfather Prince Sebastian Habsburg was the last prince of the Habsburg dynasty royal family. All my grandfather Duke and Lord James Webb the Habsburg's legitimate brothers and sisters were all on the same level as royalty in my Habsburg family, automatically inherited when they turned 21. When my indigenous Australian grandmother married Duke and Lord James, she became Duchess and Lady Myrtle Webb the Habsburg afterwards. They married in a registry office on St Kilda Road, Melbourne in 1926. She became a Duchess and Lady after the wedding when Duke and Lord James received his royal titles from his father Prince Sebastian Habsburg when he turned 21 in 1927. Duchess and Lady Myrtle had plenty of pregnancies with mostly multiple births. Whenever she had a multiple birth, all but one baby was stolen off her each time, leaving her with only one registered to her and her husband at birth, and she was vision impaired, like Napoleon. It was picking on a blind woman. Biological brothers of my father Kevin were involved in Apollo 11 and Apollo 13. It is relevant for Apollo 13 in this case. It is again disgusting, but fairly simple. Apollo 13 was sabotaged deliberately because there was a biological Habsburg on board. They set it up and then invited Einstein to the space agency to watch all the footage and listen to all the audio from the vehicles live, so he could take all events in about a Habsburg being tortured to death on a sabotaged moon mission, from start to finish. As if it would satiate him, or satisfy him in some way. Even cheer him up because he failed to steal the Habsburg royal family during World War I, even though he thought he had for a few years, tentatively until 1922. Lunatics. They invited lunatic mass murderer and sex offender fake physicist Einstein to a private base for the Apollo 13 mission. And looked after him like he had servants. He was given private quarters, etc. They set up a fault in the oxygen tanks and knew it would cause an explosion when the oxygen tanks were stirred. They even cancelled a broadcast from the vehicle to the public in the USA being broadcast live on television because they were worried the sabotaged hardware would blow during the broadcast. They didn't really want it to happen live on air. It was supposed to be a private horror show for Einstein to listen to and watch a Habsburg being murdered in space, in their opinion. Einstein was given access to his own private audio stream from the vehicles in his quarters to listen to. Some of it from hidden microphones that drained the batteries on the vehicle faster than they should have depleted to increase the likelihood of a fatal disaster for him to enjoy. The type of people who thought he may enjoy it if the crew suffocated to death or were victims of a leaked gas on air, with a similar result to offences Einstein regularly watched at places like Auschwitz. There was even some information suggesting hidden camera footage for Einstein to watch as well that also drained the craft's batteries. Whilst they pretended to entertain the heinously evil idiot, he was less than secure. Einstein was eventually caught by people with a revenge attack on him in mind, who were aware of his evils to steal and accumulate science and philosophy information whilst he was lodging to spectate on the Apollo 13 sabotage disaster. There were reports that suggested he was caught whilst being allowed to attempt to masturbate over images of molested children at the time. They abducted him and performed a physical revenge attack. They snapped his neck to a 90-degree angle. Then snapped his spine just above the hips the same. And left him strung up somewhere with a high ceiling, dangling by his torso with his head and lower body dangling when he tried to move, and left him there, making garbled yelling noises. He was eventually found by someone who went to check how the revenge attack was going, who heard him making noise, who then assessed the situation and made the informed choice to shoot him through the forehead. The term some people use for that one is putting someone out of their misery. Not an expression I like to use, even if they thought he deserved it. Not sure what happened to his body, but it is definitely not in North Korea in that fake hotel they intended to be his crypt cum temple. Weird. Apollo 13 start date was the 11th of April, 1970 according to Google. So Einstein died around April 1970. My great-grandfather Kaiser Adolf Hitler the Hohenzollern found out I could happen somewhere around that time, roughly. Kaiser Adolf returned to his place of birth for the first time since his birth when he traveled to Gippsland on holiday in November 1971. He had casually checking out information he thought was a weird prank in mind as a side motive for his trip, which was meant to be a holiday to visit his place of birth, Mo. The information was a marriage record of my parents from births, deaths, and marriages, Victoria, Australia. The 3rd of May, 1958 marriage record was listed as a wedding held in the same place Kaiser Adolf was born on the 20th of April, 1889. Mo, Gippsland, Australia. Mo is the indigenous word for a native Gippsland fruit better known as a strawberry. He eventually revived me from not breathing and no pulse at the local hospital in Warragul the day I was born, the 18th of January, 1972. He caught a man drowning me at the hospital the day I was born, who was bred with, you guessed it, Einstein sperm. When Kaiser Adolf caught him, he left me bobbling in the sink he drowned me in, and disappeared into the hospital room my mother was in through a door. I had stopped breathing and had no pulse. Kaiser Adolf gently lifted me out of the stainless steel sink, and tried CPR as an intellectual reflex-like action to me seeming to be not totally dead. And here I am.